Just a witness for the
Good
county.
evening. Today is March 18th. It is 7:30. I would like to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand for the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Lord, we're meeting here tonight to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being the source of our guidance tonight. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes, Lorraine.
Present.
Reed is absent. Mathis.
Here.
Krug is present. Kessler.
Here.
Gopal.
Here.
Tucker.
Present.
You have 6 members present.
All right. To the people in the audience, this program is televised. You will see 3 cameras in the room. 1, 2, 3. When you come up and stand at the podium, I do need you to talk loud because there's quite a few people here. But you can give your name in that. You do not have to give your address. The one thing I'm going to ask, though, please do not repeat the same thing that other people have said, because we will go through this pretty fast and get your concerns, but we don't need the repeat, okay? This being televised, it'll be on television on Charter Communication Channel 191. So you can turn your TV on. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday of this week if you have Charter TV. See yourself on it. It'll go on for 2 weeks. I can't tell you exactly what time because the children also have their basketball games and school activities go on, but you will be able to see the meeting. Approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? If none, a motion is in order to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Support.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Included in your packet are the meeting minutes for March 4th regular meeting. Are there any corrections or requested revisions for these meeting minutes? None?
Just some spelling, but
Spelling?
yeah, it's tornado, instead of tornado season, it's tomato season, so just a few.
Oh, it's tomato season.
Yeah, it's tomato.
Oh,
Yeah. Outside of that.
Are there any other corrections? All right, the meeting minutes stand as approved as amended for the corrections. Expenditures. Are there any questions regarding any of the expenditures that are in front of you? Now we had quite a few because remember our secretary had been ill and they tried to get in as many as, no, we don't. You got them in the last time then.
It's just the one we're all set.
Okay. Are there any questions, gentlemen, in regards to the expenditures? None? Okay. A motion is in order to approve the expenditures for $1,143,376.53.
So moved.
Do I have a second? You did. Any further discussion? Roll call.
I vote yes. Mathis.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Reed is absent. Gopal.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, public hearings, none. Reports, are there any committee reports to be made? None. If you notice, the flag was at half-mast. Past fire chief, Dwayne Stratman, had passed away, and so we flew it for, I think, 4 or 5 days in honor of Dwayne. I think he served the township for 25 years. Communications, none. All right, Mr. Belzer, this is an adoption of an ordinance. It's proposed update vehicle code ordinance, first reading.
Right, this is the first reading before you, and what this does, it adopts the motor vehicle code in certain parts of that. To update changes that were made, and periodically you have to do that if you're gonna stay current with the state law. So that's before you for the first reading, and it exactly mirrors the state law.
Our police officers a lot of time will come in and give us an update and say, you need to get these taken care of, or our attorney. All right, the second reading of the proposed ordinance will be on April the 1st meeting. Unfinished business, none.
By the way, Madam Supervisor, I will not be here, I'll be at the MTA seminar.
So, but I don't need your vote.
You don't, no, you don't, right.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't, I don't vote, but if anybody has a question, catch me before
Oh,
or
okay,
meeting after
gotcha.
that, yeah.
All right, all
Can
right.
we make that meeting a committee and then vote while you're gone?
Do we need to take public
Now,
comment
who
on
else
that at
is
all?
going to that?
Well,
MTA?
I'm not going to be here on April 1st, but I'm not going to be at the MTA seminar.
You're not?
No.
Is
I'll tell you
anybody
all
else,
about
I
it.
mean, are we going to be short on me April 1st? Any of you? Okay, good. All right. The next thing is new business, and it's the, well, unfinished business, none. 2019 Genesee County Road Commission Dust Control Contract. Tom, how many dirt roads do we have in the township? We don't have a lot.
About 17 miles,
Okay.
I don't know the number.
And we sign a contract with the county in regards to controlling the dust on certain roads. We usually hit it 3 times a year. Sometimes we can do with twice a year. So, Mr. Broker, I'm going to let you explain that to you because I'm losing my voice.
Okay. The proposed agreement with the road commission is similar to what we've done in past years. The first application of calcium chloride will be late April, early May, with the cost divided equally between the township and the county. The second application is purely optional and would be 100% township cost if we choose to do it. The third application in mid-September is paid for by the road commission. What we've done the past several years, and what I would recommend the board consider doing again, is approve the first and third applications and forego the middle application. Therefore, we get 2 applications for a total of a little over 11,000 versus adding a third application and adding 22,000 more to our expense. That has worked well for us. There are certain roads that will get extra attention as needed. And if we have a real bad year and we decide we want the second application, there is still time to bring that back to be added. But so far, knock on wood, we haven't needed to do that.
So spot treatment's available prorated.
Yes, well, just a couple of roads that, Hogan Road is one that gets a little extra attention. And any others, they can fit into the schedule as needed. But for the overall contract, I would recommend we stay with the same program we've been doing.
And Hogan Road is being corrected now this year in regards to the condition of the road. So this is going to help it. Are there any questions, gentlemen? Nothing? All right. I need a motion to approve the 2019 Genesee County Road Commission Dust Control Program, including applications of 38% liquid calcium chloride at the rate of 2,000 gallons per mile as follows.
So moved.
Support.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mathis?
Yes.
Kessler?
Yes.
I vote yes. Gopal?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
And Reed is absent. Motion passes.
I mentioned our past Fire Chief Dwayne Stratman, and so we have a resolution that is resolution number 2019-06. This is a memorial for Dwayne Stratman. He was the former fire chief of Fenton Township years and years ago. He passed away at the age of 77. Mr. Stratman was very involved in the formation of Fenton Township Fire Department in the 70s. and was a member of the department for 25 years. A memorial resolution has been prepared to honor Mr. Stratman's public service. Do I have any board discussion? Okay, resolution number 2019-06. Clerk Crew, would you please present the resolution?
Yes, thank you. Whereas former Fenton Township Fire Chief and Assistant Fire Chief Dwayne D. Stratman passed away on March 5th, 2018, and whereas Mr. Stratman was a longtime resident of Fenton Township, during which time he contributed greatly to the progress and welfare of the community, most notably as one of the co-founders and first fire chief of the Fenton Township Fire Department. And whereas Mr. Stratman served loyally and faithfully as a member of the Fenton Township Fire Department from its inception until 1975, until his retirement in 2000, serving in the position of fire chief and later as an assistant fire chief, helping to oversee the development of the fire department into one of the finest in Genesee County, while consistently exhibiting the qualities of leadership and dedication to public safety. Now therefore be it resolved that the Fenton Township Board of Trustees hereby honor Dwayne D. Stratman for his valuable contribution to our community, conveys sincere appreciation and gratitude for his dedicated service to the government and citizens of Fenton Township, and express profound sadness at his passing. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this meeting, and a copy given to the Mr. Stratman's family. This resolution was adopted by the Township of the Charter Township of Fenton at a regular meeting, duly called and held on the 18th day of March 2019. I will move the resolution.
I'll support. All right. All in favor say, no, let's say roll call. Roll call, please.
Gopal.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Mathis.
Yes.
I vote yes. Reed is absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Resolution passes.
Okay. The next item is a zoning issue that you all are waiting for. This is the property adjacent to Silver Spray Sports. Our zoning administrator is in the audience right here, Michael Deem, and he will explain it. Then your attorney, George Reisig, I saw him. Oh, there he is. Okay. So he will put his input, and then our attorney, Mr. Belzer, will do his input.
So I think it'd be more efficient to have George start.
George? Okay.
You know, explain what the request is and what the...
Okay. If you cannot hear George, raise your hand and we'll have him speak louder.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do some sort of oath thing. Hello, I'm George Reisig. Good enough? Okay. And I represent the Silver Marl Lake Association. I had contacted Mr. Deem a couple weeks ago, I believe it was, with the request that we be put on the agenda for tonight to discuss the parking issues that would occur or that had to be addressed because Silver Spray Sports had requested from the city the right to expand the marina. Let me give you some background information. I did submit a written presentation, 7 pages long. It's not really all that long. The last 3 pages are pictures of the 3 lots that we're talking about that are in the township. First of all, Silver Spray has a marina that's located, it has 2 parcels in the city. And those parcels end in 001 and 004. Now, you know where those parcels are. They have the 2 sets of slips that come out into Silver Lake off the south side of Silver Lake Road, just across from Panema. The starting from their second parcel, their second parcel is at the very westerly end of the city and the easterly end of the township. So starting from that parcel and moving to the west towards Marl Drive, you have parcel 025, 024, and 023. Those three parcels are in the township, but they use those parcels, at least part of those parcels, for parking for the operation of the Silver Sports Marina in the city. The three Fenton chip, the city parcels are zoned GBD, which is a business classification. The three Fenton Township parcels are zoned C2, which is general business. The applicant uses those parcels, as I said, for parking for vehicles that are going to be using the marina to take their boats in and out of the slips. They had requested an expansion of their slips from 33 slips to 50 slips. They did receive an MDEQ permit for the additional slips, but the MDEQ permit has as its usual conditions, this doesn't mean that you've passed anything as far as local municipality laws, you haven't satisfied any municipality requirements, and this is not to be inferred from the fact that the DEQ granted the slips, that the township or city should grant any permits. That's all at the local level. We have a very strong, in Michigan, very strong home rule tradition, and that's why the DEQ puts that in their conditions. They also indicated in their conditions that this doesn't preordain or predetermine any sort of nuisance causes of action. Now, one of the parcels in the township, that would be parcel 024, has two buildings on it. I think one appears to be some sort of shed or garage. The other is a residential apartment building. So we have parcels starting from moving to the west from the city parcels, 025, which looks like it's all parking, 024, which has some parking, an apartment building and a shed, and then 023, which fronts on Marl Drive. All three township parcels are adjacent to residential district. The residential district that starts immediately to the south of them. There's actually a house that fronts on Marl Drive. And parcel 023 is adjacent to Marl Drive, and that's going to be important, and I'll tell you why in a second. If you look at page 2 of the presentation I've given, it shows where the slips are going to be added or proposed to be added. Now, there is some contest of that at the city level, and it centers around a number of things, such as safety, health, safety, and welfare of lake residents, as well as whether or not the applicant even owns that property that the slips are going to be off of. Article 6 of the Township's ordinance says that marine sales and service requires one parking space for every 200 feet of usable floor area. Well, floor area is kind of an evanescent concept here because there's no floor area on these parcels for marine uses. I'm not sure if that would apply to the floor area across the way or the floor area on the city parcels of the buildings that are on the city parcels. In the C2 district, the front area setback cannot be used for parking, and it has to remain as open space, unoccupied and unobstructed from the ground upward, except for landscaping, plant materials, vehicle access drives, or signage. Section 604 of the ordinance has really strict parking lot construction requirements. Currently, the parking lot that Silver Spray uses does not meet the requirements under section 6.04. 6.04 talks about surfacing requirements, drainage, lighting, spacing, parking space sizes, ingress and egress, drive lane marking, handicap accessibility requirements. So the existing parking does not meet that. Let me step aside for a second, walk away from the ordinance to talk about the existing parking lot. The existing parking lot probably predates the current ordinance, and so it is an existing non-conforming use. I know you're all familiar from your classes that existing non-conforming uses can stay in effect, but they cannot be changed or expanded without complying with the current ordinance requirements. So if they are expanding the use on the city parcels to add these additional slips, to move them up to 50 from 33, then it would require them to accommodate those with parking, and the parking would probably have to be either greater than what they have now, or it'd have to be adjusted somehow. That is, the parking accommodates the current Silver Spray Marina usage and the number of slips there. That's probably grandfathered in, but any change, such as an expansion or intensification of the use of the Silver Spray by adding these 17 slips, would require additional parking. And so they would have to come back in and meet all these requirements for their parking area, because when you try to expand a non-conforming use, the ordinance automatically boots it into new site plan, new zoning requirements, things like that. So the current proposed parking area does not meet the requirements if they're going to expand the use. C2 is a business district, of course. The ordinance also mandates a side setback of 80 feet required for all buildings and parking and loading areas in this district if the district is located adjacent to or adjoining a residential zoning district or where it borders a side street. And so what I've done, all mentioned in my presentation, that all 3 township parcels are adjacent to a residential district, and parcel 023 borders Marl Drive, which is a side street. If you look at section 3.27, note E of your ordinance, okay, you'll see where this 80-foot requirement comes from. And so what I've done on page 3 of the presentation is I've outlined in red the area that they can use for parking under the current ordinance requirements. It's hardly anything. So if they were going to expand the use and have to come back in for a site plan, they would also need a variance from the current parking requirements. And I established these red lines by looking at the measurements of the lots on the last 3 pages. For example, the lots at their very deepest are 132 feet. If they have to be 82 feet from that first house on Marl Drive, at least 52 feet of property that fronts Silver Lake Road for parking. And then they have to have the 80-foot elimination from Marl Drive, and that parcel is only, excuse me, 86 feet wide, so they can only use 6 feet of that. So if you apply the requirements, that the 80-foot setback requirements from both the residential district to the south, I would call it, and Marl Drive to the west, it really reduces the number of parking spaces they have below what they have right now. So my point is while the applicant may have the right to continue to use the 3 parcels for parking under the current use because they're grandfathered in as an existing non-conforming use that predates the current ordinance provisions, for the 33 slip marina, that when they expand or enlarge the marina to 50, okay, parking takes on, there's a fresh look at parking. And at that point, when you have a fresh look at parking, it has to meet the current zoning requirements, including the 80-foot setbacks and all those construction requirements for a parking lot: lighting, drainage, marked spaces, marked drive lanes, marked ingress and egress signage, and all those things. And so if the applicant is going to be expanding, if the city grants the additional 17 slips, I don't think that the applicant can use the Fenton Township parking area without coming in and getting a new site plan for that. That's really the gist of this presentation. There's no action, I don't think, for the township, no formal action for the township to take right now. This is more informational, that the applicant would have to come in and get a new site plan because of the expansion of the marina. If you have any questions, I put this together very quickly, and I can go through the ordinance sections with you if you want to.
George, what is the width of that primary rectangle in red that you've outlined? It's got a little bit of bending on it, but there's generally a rectangle there. Do you know what that is?
Yes, the depth of those lots from Silver Lake Road is 132 feet. If you take away 80 feet, it leaves 52 feet. So that this dimension from Silver Lake Road in is 52 feet, that primary rectangle. Then you have that little nipple at the bottom.
Right. Thanks.
Are there any questions from the board?
George, does he own the property across the street too?
No, I think that's really tough. I have a property, a title search being done on that right now.
Okay.
Now, the question for us is whether the railroad owns the property, whether Dr. Lesneski, who is here tonight, owns the property. Dr. Lesneski bought the marina property across the street on Panema.
Oh, okay.
And he may own that property. We don't know whether the railroad owns it or the railroad simply has a right-of-way grant through there. I've also asked the title company to pull a search on the property south of Silver Lake Road where those additional orange slips, the additional 17 slips are showing, because it's not showing up as any parcel number on the City of Fenton tax parcels. If you go on the GIS maps and you look at all the numbers assigned, it doesn't show. It could very well be owned by the city. I know that the Smiths believe that they own it, but I pulled a title search. I was supposed to have the results today. I did not receive them. So the answer to your question is, I don't think that they own, the Smiths own the property to the north side. It could be Dr. Lesneski, it could be the railroad.
Thank you.
And the supervisor, one thing that doesn't show here, between the existing buildings and Silver Lake Road, there are engineered and approved plans for the non-motorized trail that they're going to be asking for a millage for in May. So it even complicates more
Yeah, I
the
didn't know that.
area,
I didn't know anything about that.
because they were gonna utilize the right-of-way, because that way you don't have to go through and get easements and stuff from the property owners, which are on the other side, and they wanted to stay away from the railroad. I just thought,
If I may inquire, is that 100-foot right away there or 66? I'm guessing 100.
I want to say 100.
I don't think so.
Southern Lakes Park and Rec is heading this up with, under what the LAF, which is Linden, Argentine, Fenton, and Fenton Township Group. They should be able to supply everything that they have, George. If they won't, I can get it for you.
I'll find out, thank you.
Any questions from the board? I think,
So I have a couple of comments.
yes, Mike. This is our zoning administrator and planning commission.
So I agree with about 98% of what George is saying.
Excuse me.
That parking does not conform to current zoning, right? If it were to be a new parking lot, it would not look like that, would not act like how it is. So the question becomes, well, when's the trigger when we can require them to upgrade the parking lot? The work that's going on, the proposal is for, in the city of Fenton. It's not in the township. They have not come to us to ask to do any changes to their parking. They want to expand their parking. They want to do any changes to it. Then they have to come in and comply with the zoning ordinance or seek variances. So really, the question is, do we have the authority to require them to upgrade their parking if they do not need to upgrade their parking for the city side where the work is actually going on? We don't have the authority to review their site plan on the city side. So, I agree with what George is saying. These are important issues to be aware of, and for us to keep watch on the township side to see if there are changes that are happening or planned to occur. And when something happens on the township side is when we would have the authority to require them to upgrade and meet the ordinance.
Mike, how would you calculate parking for this, given that the use is in the city and the parking area is in the township?
Well, I can give you a couple answers.
Okay.
So the city has specific parking requirements for docks, right, and slips. It's one per slip plus one parking space per 5 dry dock spaces for the winter. I don't know if they're able to meet that requirement, 50 parking spaces plus. As I don't know what the current layout is. For us, we don't have a specific requirement for docks or marinas. And when we had those situations, what we can do is we look at the closest use. From my perspective, the closest use would be as a private park, which would require 1 space per 3 users at maximum utilization of the property. So we would have to figure out some way to determine what that maximum utilization is. If there's 50 slips, 50 boats, all right, well, how many does a boat hold? What's the average, right? So, yeah, at the minimum 50, right? I think everyone could agree 50 spots is a minimum, but then we would have to figure out what the appropriate number is somewhere above 50.
Do you agree with George's basic syllogism that the expansion of the non-conforming use in the city triggers the normal reaction to expansion of non-conforming uses in the township?
I don't believe so. And it's a jurisdictional issue, right? Because if this were one whole parcel in the township, then yes, it would trigger that. But, you look at how the uses are, right? The use is the city use, and you have the township use. So the township use is the parking. And that's not, theoretically, it's not changing. What's changing is on the city side. It's sort of like if someone were building a Rite Aid, right on the city line. That's going to affect township also, but we wouldn't have the ability to say, all right, well, your parking says you only need this. Well, we don't think that's appropriate. We think you need more parking, and then make them put in additional parking for their Rite Aid, because we have 2 different ordinances that say 2 different things.
Mike, has the city determined, I just going off what John was just saying, has the city determined that there is an adequate parking for the additional, just to me, looking at the property, I really can't see like 70 spaces. Number one, they're not marked. So where is it at in the city? I mean, is it went just to planning, or is it went to the board?
So unfortunately, all right, that's really a question for the city. We don't really have that dialogue going on. And I think maybe that's one of the things that the residents are hoping that can come out of this, is that that dialogue is opened up, without maybe us telling them you have to do this, but be able to sit down and just discussing it to make sure everyone's on the same page. Because I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
I can't see the city making a decision based on what I see here to add another 17 spaces. Or another 15 votes or 17?
17.
17 slips.
Right, so by their ordinance, that's a minimum of 17 additional parking spaces that would be required.
Minimum.
Tom,
Is all the parking on the Fenton Township
we
side?
got some people
Like
back there that need
95% of it.
chairs.
There's a couple spaces on the
I
city
think they've
side.
used up all their chairs. Do you want to check it
But
out?
the parking on the city side, I mean,
Yeah, I got about,
wouldn't they even be short based on the size of the building?
That's likely.
I can answer the question about the city. We were at the Planning Commission meeting a couple weeks ago, and the city tabled for a number of reasons. There was a representation of the applicant to the city that they had either contacted or spoken with the township, and the township, something along the lines of, had no problems with their parking.
never,
I don't know that that occurred or not.
never.
And I said, maybe they had some unofficial meeting, and they said, well, that if it comes to us, we'll look at it, but right now, it's not before us. I assume maybe that was the conversation. I know sometimes I hear what I want to hear when somebody tells me something, but, and I assume all of us have that fault.
So it's just in the planning phase.
Yes, they got their DEQ permit.
Means nothing, as far as.
It basically says you can put stuff in the water.
Right.
Okay, it has nothing to do with the zoning. The city they tabled it for a number of reasons. One was the ownership of the property issue, that strip between Silver Lake Road and the lake on the south side of Silver Lake Road. And a lot of individuals actually came in with some much more, I would say, intellectually interesting arguments than I had made that night, which mine was simply ownership, because I was only involved about 24 hours prior to the meeting. And they brought in stuff regarding lake safety, density of the lakes. For example, somebody brought in some statistic about there were maybe 180 slips on Lake Fenton, which is 900 acres. There's 140 slips on Silver Lake already, which is like 300 acres. So as far as density, Silver Lake was far more dense in slip usage than Lake Fenton was. And they brought us some statistics from past studies that the DEQ had done regarding density, and these exceeded it by almost tenfold. So the city was looking at that sort of stuff based on their ordinance. There's also a special land use in the city. Marinas in the city of Fenton are special land uses in every district. It's not a principal permitted use in any district. And so they were looking to see whether or not their planner had said it meets, as far as the general requirements, you have general and specific requirements. The general requirements, he says he thought they could satisfy those, and he said the specific requirements, they could probably satisfy most of them, but he did not say all of them, so I think they were looking at the ones that they might not be able to satisfy. I don't want to speak for the city as to what their decision was or where they're sitting right now in their minds, but they tabled it for a number of reasons.
Was parking an issue at that meeting?
Parking was raised, but the presentation by the applicant was that they had talked to the township or met with the township, and that the township didn't have any issue currently with their parking.
So I can speak on that. So we were asked to provide a zoning verification letter by Silver Spring Sports. And essentially what this letter says is that the 3 parcels in the township are zoned C2, and that they have traditionally been used for parking for the marina. We made no analysis on the number of spaces available or stating that there was adequate parking for additional slips. We merely stated the zoning district and the use of those parcels.
Thank you.
Mr. Belzer, you have anything to say?
Sure. Well, one of the things we have to look at, and we met previously here at the township, a prior non-conforming use is only okay if it was legal at the time it was instituted. One of the parcels we weren't sure about. 2 of them, probably. The vacant lot was C2 and 71, and we didn't have all the information about when the marina went in there, and C2 does not allow for parking as a primary use in any event. I mean, that's not an allowed use within that zoning district. There's still a lot of unanswered questions here, and I'm of the opinion, as our last 2 speakers, that it probably would not work just for all 3 parcels here to be turned into parking space. I mean,
There's apartments there.
well, one has an apartment, the building, one's been basically vacant, sporadically used, the best we can understand, for parking, and the other one, there's like an easement going to this apartment building across the one parcel, and it's a general easement. It's not a specific easement, it's rather it's just a general easement for the whole parcel to be used for access to those apartments. Then there was a question if that other building is also being used as a residence, which we don't know.
So just for clarification, C2 is certainly not used for parking.
Correct.
Would that still be considered grandfathered?
Well,
Because Mr. Risey talks about being grandfathered, so is
Well,
that
maybe.
going to? Okay, so since the use was allowed,
no, if they were using it for parking legally before the C2 zoning went into effect, they could probably continue that. The missing word is legal. A non-conforming
In the
use
hot
all by
days, they
itself
do.
doesn't
Right there.
grandfather something. It has to be legal when it starts. I mean, if you're violating the ordinance for 50 years, that doesn't give you any rights.
Which is the case here. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're
It
zone
seems to
C2
be.
in 71, we're 48 years.
Right, and I don't know that it was used for parking at that point. I
Or
mean,
when the marina was put in.
Yeah.
Does anybody know when the guardrail went up? What year? Was it in the 70s? After the 70s? Okay.
Go swimming there.
Yeah. Mike, do you have anything else to, do you have any questions to ask Mr. Dean? Okay. Yes.
Is there a zoning language on public restrooms? based
On
the
public
parking?
restrooms?
Yep.
All right, first of all, I need your name.
John Jones.
Did you get it, Tom? That I don't know. I'd say that.
So not zoning, but there'd be building code issues, right? So the building code requires X amount of facilities, depending on the number of people. That's not my realm of knowledge, though, so I don't know exactly what those numbers are, but that would fall under the building code.
Okay. I heard they use porta potties already.
All right, there's a lady over here.
Rhonda here. I have a question regarding their current lots that they're using for parking. And like you had mentioned, it's just a field, it's just grass. There is no parking spots dedicated to this car. And you're absolutely right, any residential parking requires more than just one parking spot per whatever the use is. So, I mean, there's no heads up that they're not compliant today, I guess is what I'm saying, because we don't even know how many cars can sit on the current parking. So how is that managed, or?
So that gets back to what we were talking about with it being a non-conforming situation, right? So non-conforming means that it does not meet how the ordinance reads today. If this were a brand new use and they just opened up, they would not be allowed to do what they're doing, right? They would not be allowed to just park on that lot. The issue that we have is that from, as far as we can tell, it's been used that way for a long time. And we don't know how long exactly it has been used that way. And as the attorney stated, you know, the question is, all right, is it illegal non-conforming, or is it just something that's just always, that's been illegal since they started?
How do we get the answer to that?
We're working on it. We're trying to go through our history files. You know, ideally, it would be something where you just pull up the address and you could pull the file really quick, but in the real world, that's not really how it works. We have files in different locations, and, you know, farther back in time you go, the quality of records aren't, you know, what you'd like them to be. So we're still working on researching on our end to see what information we have to determine, you know, when did we know they were doing it and at what point compared to what the zoning ordinance stated at the time. Because there are statements in there about existing parking at the adoption of the ordinance, but again, we need to know when that parking was existing to know if it was complying with the ordinance at the time. Because as we said, it does not comply with the ordinance today.
I have a question then. I'm David Scott of Highway Trail. For you to look at a parking situation like that then, does the use of the parking, what it's being used for, then come into play in your approval? Meaning if it was going to be used for slips on the lake in the city, you guys would take that into consideration what the use of the parking is going to be for, correct?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Well,
That goes into what I want to talk about.
Right.
If you're,
I think we have another question in the back here first.
Yeah, Rick Savansky, can they put porta potties on that property now? And can they add to them? Could they add more
they can put porta potties.
lake spots? All of a sudden, there's 6 porta potties out there. Is that legal forever?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. That's something I'd have to look into for you.
They do it already.
The ramp that's here on Lake Fenton, that's the public launch, they have parking spots, and I don't know, Mike, if we need to consider this. That is also for the car or truck and the boat trailer.
Yep.
And right there, that would cut down a tremendous amount.
The one you're talking about, though, is the DNR access, so I'm sure there's different regulations.
But what would they do with the trailers, you know, if they come in?
I agree.
It should be noted that there's also a dock there. They also,
Ricky, you gotta talk louder, hon.
it should also be noted that that property also has a dock, and it has the ability to launch where they let people launch their boats into the water as well. So that would have to be you know, they'd have to apply the parking for that as well.
Yeah, I don't
Daily
know
use
what that
members,
launch would
daily
be.
users.
City, I don't know.
But that launch is true, has been there, right? That's not a new launch, correct?
Correct.
been there.
What I'm getting at is I think the spaces that are in front of us right now are not conforming to what
That's not
Correct.
that part says, you know, should
It's going to be so hard.
Right.
And this would bring all kinds of things to the front.
All right, it looks like there's a line here, so.
All right. David Scott, again, I'm sorry, Pinewood Trail. We are definitely going to be very respectful of your time. We're going to try not to duplicate. A lot of people have things lined up, ready to go, of different facts. What I wanted to show you was if you're approving spaces based on the fact that they're going to be used in slips, even though the slips are in the city, we want you to see what that means to the lake. So the DNR has done, I'm sorry, I can't use this. The DNR has done multiple studies on this, and what a lot of people say is that there's no way to know how it's going to affect the lake. Well, that's actually not true. So George started to say a little bit. Right now, Lake Fenton has 145 slips between Skipper Buds and South Long Lake Road. Sorry, thank you. So they have one slip for approximately every 6.2 acres of water. Right now, currently on Silver Lake, this is going to amaze you, we have 113 slips, which is one slip for every 2.74 acres of land. So we have 3 times as many boats occupying as much space as Lake Fenton does. I think that's a pretty, unusual number. If I didn't tell you that beforehand, I don't think anyone would have guessed that we have that many more slips and that many more boats than what you guys have in Lake Fenton. The more unique part about Silver Lake is I have a report from the DNR here, and I'll give you a copy. I've highlighted all the pages that really have the important facts on them. It talks about usable space on a lake. Usable space means coming in 100 feet from every shoreline, staying 100 feet from any hazard. That would be channel areas, islands, things like that. This kind of represents what Silver Lake would look like in terms of usable space. If you take out all the areas that are unusable, our lake goes from 310 acres to about 160 acres. Using the DNR's facts that say it takes about 15 acres per boat, it puts us at 11 boats operating at the same time on Silver Lake. That's 11 boats under power now, okay? So it doesn't count people hanging out at a sandbar or just putting through. It's 11 boats at 50% power or more. So that's 11 skiers, 11 jet skiers, or 11 boats pulling skiers, tubers, whatever you have. That's not a lot of boats for 300 people who live on a lake. It goes up really, really fast. So we have 300 homes on the lake, 112 slips. We have 400 some people on this lake. And according to the DNR report that I have here, it says we can have 11 boats on the lake at the same time. I mean, what's that, 3% of our homeowners? So 3% of our total people can be on the lake at the same time? If this was being approved today using these, neither slip would have any slips.
That's true.
Neither marinas would have a slip. So
Go ahead,
we're not asking to go backwards, but we're asking, we can't go forwards.
Sir, just so I understand, this board has nothing to do with that.
But you're going to approve the parking that could go along through this. So I
We're
think
not
that-
approving
know.
anything, and we
No,
have
but I'm saying
nothing.
that's where
But
you're going to see
whether
that go
we-
along.
Whether we allow the parking or not, that has nothing to do with what the city of Fenton allows on.
That was
the
my
lake.
opening question. I said, would your board approve the parking is it in conjunction of what the
we really-
use would be?
Well,
And you said yes.
it's really hard to do that. I mean, I've had some experience in this, and Mr. Tucker's had some experience. It's real hard for one municipality to regulate things based on things going on in another
But
municipality.
80% of this lake sits in the township.
Well,
It's going to affect your residents in the township. How do you not protect them then as the board that we all voted in? How do you not protect us?
I think
on
the
that?
board's not looking not to protect you, but there's limitations by law what they can do. There's no way legally the board could control parking on this property based upon the usage on the lake or what goes on at that marina. I mean, that's just,
Okay.
it's not legally connected.
Well, the city at their meeting specifically said the opposite, just so you know. They said that the township would have to be able to approve the parking based on
Well,
this.
if they're basing on that, that may never happen then.
Yeah.
So Jack, we can't regulate the parking on those spaces?
We can regulate the parking But it goes back, has nothing to do with how many boats are on the lake. There could be a zillion
No, I
boats or no
understand that,
boats.
but what I'm saying is.
But doesn't that go back to
if we
public
tell them that
safety?
they can't park there any longer, then they can't, they're not going to. I'm not saying we would do that, I'm just saying that
Right, if-
we can.
But
If
doesn't
we
that go back to
can-
public safety? Doesn't that, doesn't that go back to public safety? You're approving parking for what would create an unsafe position in our lake.
The one thing that, David, even Lake Fenton, they're state-owned lakes. We do not control the waters of these lakes.
Right.
Now, you just said City of Fenton owns quite a bit of Silver Lake, you know, I mean,
No,
land.
Fenton Township owns quite a bit. City of
Oh,
Fenton owns
okay.
minimal.
All right, we have the same thing here on this lake.
All right.
But that's on the very south end of the lake, as far as ownership. When I sit here and I hear everybody what they're saying, yes, it makes sense what you're talking about.
Okay.
But it's going to be almost impossible to do it. And the only thing that we have control of is the township property, the dirt.
Right.
And do we want parking lots?
Right. No.
Basically, that's what it would be.
Well, and it's not even that simple, regretfully. The question becomes is, what was this use at the time a zoning ordinance was adopted? And if this parking use precedes the adoption of an ordinance, if it was legal at some point in time and continually, all the way kept being done and done and done up until now, there's virtually nothing the township can do. If, however, they're looking to expand that use,
Right.
not the marina, but
Yeah,
this
I just don't
parking.
see how, if the parking is in a separate township, and obviously you've made your point, I'm not going to batter you, but if the parking is in a separate township and they're looking for the parking to be approved there, that you wouldn't relatively look back at what it's going to be used for.
Well, that's
I
the
feel-
city of Fenton.
Well, no, but you're the one who's going to approve parking.
Well, we're not going to, no.
Or I mean, go before you.
No. I mean, the question becomes is, have they used this parking legally at some point in time and continue to do it? Some of it, I think the answer is no. Some of it, we don't know.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Jason Russo. Excuse me. Silver Lake resident since 2006. And I thought I knew what I was going to say when I came up here, but all the people before me kind of threw me off. I don't know what we're talking about. But I do hear a kind of recurring theme, and that is expansion. It's expansion in the city. It's expansion in the township. It's expansion. And to try to spare you my personal opinion, the research I've done mostly comes from the Michigan DNR. And as I'm sure it's no surprise to any of us, this topic has come up many times before this now. The DNR analyzes this as a term they call carrying capacity, and Mr. Scott spoke about carrying capacity. They term carrying capacity as the number of boats that can use a lake without damaging water quality and safe recreational use. We look at many characteristics. They produce a figure, which is a boats per acreage figure, which, and to try to spare you again what Dave already talked about, Silver and Marl Lakes already exceed this figure, which is produced by the Michigan DNR. So if we're not talking about that, I think we're talking about parking. And to kind of segue into that, there's a concept of watershed, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And the watershed is the land area that drains to one stream, lake, or river. And watershed affects the quality of water in that body in the surrounding area. So expansion, no matter if it's in the city or the township or in the third municipality, which Silver and Marl Lakes has kind of an interesting layout, the expansion there I see negatively impacting the watershed. And I don't want to talk, or I won't talk anymore about the empty grass lot and if it's legal, if there's handicap spots there, if the expansion would cause traffic or safety concerns. But I'm pretty sure that the grass spot they use is not great at controlling water runoff. And I don't see this being in the best interests of the lake, and I would hope you would consider that in your decisions.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Hello, my name is Sean Africa. I will make this quick. So we are all here, I believe everybody would agree that the applicant is Silver Lake, as well as Silver Spray Sports, Patty and Jeffrey Smith. So here are meeting minutes that date back November 12, 2015, from the Fenton Township. R 15-006, develop the property as a mini storage facility with larger temperature-controlled storage buildings. This would be directly right across the street from Phil Hagerman's horse farm, which is on Silver Lake Road. So again, right across the street from Phil Hagerman's horse farm. The applicant, back in 2015, was looking to add storage units. I'm very familiar with this because I just did 2 months ago and it got shot down unanimously due to the traffic. There were multiple letters of protest stating that the area is beautiful and serene, a quiet community setting with residents, farms, fields, orchards, and barns. They said the commercial development would be a detriment to the community because of the aesthetics and additional traffic generated. Also concerns of water runoff. Others provided public comment were Ross Merchant, Dave Whitty, Mike Conway, Sandy Samping, and Patty Smith, Silver Spray Sports. They all shared concerns about the aesthetics with lights and fencing, the traffic and the sprawl of commercial along the Silver Lake Road into residential neighborhoods. Again, traffic and the sprawl of commercial along Silver Lake Road from Patty Smith. This is dated again in 2015, November. And Mrs. Mathis, going with your statement, a lot of the board members up here know that I've been a long time Lake Fenton resident, love Lake Fenton. Had the opportunity to come over to Silver Lake roughly about 5 years ago. And I'm a huge water skier, big part of the Silver Lake Ski Club. On weekends, you can't water ski on Silver Lake.
Olympics.
Mrs. Mathis brought up the south end of Lake Fenton. That's where Ricky, my brother, and I grew up. Imagine what Mr. Scott just said, roughly about 160 acres. Imagine Silver Lake being the south end of the lake, of Lake Fenton. That is what our lake is every single Saturday and every single Sunday. We cannot go through the channel and access the greater mouth of Lake Fenton that goes into the cove, that goes down Windsor Beach, that goes down Lakeshore Drive, goes down Margaret Drive. We do not have that due to the sandbars, due to the one way of the island. Also, what Mr. David Scott says, all these residents, the majority of them, except a very few, one of me being that I live in the city, these are Fenton Township residents. We are here, obviously this isn't part of what's going on, but you have to understand, in 1986, I believe that was the day, I'll never forget it the rest of my life. Coming through the channel, I saw 2 bodies being pulled from Lake Fenton. That's when the boats ran over each other. This gentleman that's going to speak next, a new resident of Silver Lake. So I'll let you hear his story real quick, but something is bound to happen. There are more jet skis parked at Silver Spray Sports. There's no way that they have 33 slips because of the amount of jet skis and everything like that. So again, imagine, Mrs. Mathis, south end of Lake Fenton is now Silver Lake. Something is going to happen, and we ask you to control that.
And you did address me, Sean. Absolutely, we care. I mean, why wouldn't we care? I mean, it's safety, many, many things. But we've got to do it legally. If we do something wrong, it's going to come back and get us again. Our zoning administrator, Mr. Dean, has, and none of you know this, weeks upon weeks since he's gone to the city of Fenton, books, papers comes into my desk. We talk about it all the time. We brought in Mr. Belzer. We're on it, but we can't find the legal papers. Silver Lake wasn't, even Lake Fenton, there's certain things at Johnson's Landing we don't know, and Mr. Lorraine lives on Johnson's Landing. We don't know all this stuff. They didn't take paper, you know, and then some of our files for years and years have been lost. That goes way back. What did they do with them? So we are on it. We can't make a decision tonight. And it's good that we see all you people, and it's important. And you are an unbelievable crowd. You're not jumping on us and all that. We are working on it. And we know about, my concerns is a fire truck. You know, what happens if that's parking lots? And they're all packed with boats and that, and I can't get a fire truck in there if I needed it because of a drowning. Do I have, and I don't know, Mike, if you know this or not, do we have sewer lines on the south side of Silver Lake?
I don't know.
See, that's another thing. The more we talk, I thought we got to find out where your sewer lines are. There's many, many things, but we're not forgetting you at all. I mean, the waters, we have 17 lakes, and we watch for all of them. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Ben Hanault. A little bit different situation than the rest of the folks in here. I'm probably the newest person out here. And the one thing that really kind of caught my attention, you know, we get out there, we move into our house, we get our boat out there, we get the floats, and we can't take the kids out. It's just too busy. So that's the current situation right now.
You can't take the what?
I can't take the kids out. It's too busy. So we want to go tubing, we want to do stuff. I'm not going to have a kid fall off the back of a tube and get run over. And I can tell you right now that there's been a lot of situations where I've had to wait till dusk, right?
That's right.
Okay, I can't take them out tubing and when it's dark, so it's already too late. So there's been many opportunities that I can't take the kids out. I think Dave brought this board in right here. You know, it'd be nice if there was like some sandbars shown on there, but there's like really 2 loops you can do. On the south side, right in front of the bridge, there's a little loop you can do. It's kind of a small loop, and then you can go out to the main lake and kind of loop around. But it's like a racetrack. Everybody's right behind each other. If you got some kids on a tube, you better be watching them. And it gets really busy. So, I mean, being responsible, I'm not going to take a chance with having an issue with my kid getting run over, you know. So we end up waiting. It's dark. By the time everybody's off the water, we can't do it, you know. And we moved down there so we could take advantage of that. I can tell you there's a lot of times we don't, you know, and I think that's kind of wrong. So if we're going to make it even busier, I mean, there's going to be somebody that's going to say, I'm going to take my kid out because I'm getting pestered. They're going to make that decision, and we will end up with a problem like what Sean was talking about. So I just, you know, food for thought. That's been my observation. It was something I was very surprised.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Hello, Bonnie. How are you?
Good.
All right, for the record, my name is Mark Mastola. I live on Highland Trail, which is on Marl Lake, so I'm a concerned citizen, but I'm also a Fenton Township Planning Commissioner. So from my responsibilities there, I think I could add a little bit of insight into whether or not we're in a position as a township to step in, even though there's a, you know, ongoing, you know, illegal, you know, ongoing, what is the right, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Yeah, non-conforming, right? So historically, the township doesn't go out policing or look for violations, right? If things are going on and nobody's complaining and neighbors are getting along, we're pretty happy with that, right? But then when something like this comes up, now we've got something that needs to be resolved, right? We've got a business that wants to expand, and we've got residents that are unhappy with it. So that triggers lots of things, right? So many of the issues that people are worried about in terms of parking, that really needs to be decided at the Planning Commission level. The Planning Commission would be responsible for determining the type of surface, screening from the neighbors, drainage, all of these things people are bringing up, the number of parking places, right? So the key question is, do we really have the right at this point to send Silver Spray to the marina for a site plan review? And I think we do, because I have our newest ordinance manual right here, and we have ordinance that govern site plans, right? So we have in section, and you can look this up later, of course, section 8.02, and this defines when is a site plan required. So these are triggers, even for existing pieces of property, triggers of when a new site plan would be reviewed. So one of the triggers actually says, any changes in which requires construction of 10 or more additional parking places or 5 or more vehicle or boat trailer combination places. So this right there shows that if Silver Spray didn't ask for the additional slips, even though they're non-conforming, it existed, everybody puts up with it, that would be fine. But because even though they're requesting something in the city, the piece of property that's in the township that they're using for parking, they're really changing the use. They're trying to change the use to increase the amount of parking. And then in our ordinance it says, if you're trying to increase that by more than 10 spaces, that should trigger a site plan review. So if it triggers a site plan review, that would be you sending them back to the planning commission, which would require everything a site plan needs. We would need drawings, runoff, we would need calculations, because they've got 3 different business operations there. We have required parking places for their retail space, number of employees, their marina, and their boat launch facility, right? So the planning commission would be tasked with trying to figure out what Mr. Dean was trying to say is, okay, how many parking spots do they really need? Do they have it on that property? And what should we have them do? So I think that we do have a right, even with this piece of property, to look at their parking and possibly require them to bring it up to the current standards because they're changing the intensity and the use. So I think that there's 2 things that I think that you trustees could do to help out the citizens. Number 1, require that the Silver Spray have to come back to the marina, come back to the planning commission, that have a new site plan for their parking if they're going to pursue the additional slips. That's the first thing that I think would be very helpful. And the second thing is if you could draft a letter or some type of resolution to the city, just so in case the city is basing their decision on additional slips based on Silver Spray having adequate parking on our side, I would like something official from the township to say that has not been decided. And then even if it comes to the planning commission and we decide they do have some or not, give that information to the city, because it is a sticky area with cross jurisdictions like that. But we have to be aware of what our neighbors are doing and how that's going to affect us and help them by giving them input. So that's what I think. Those 2 things, if you could help us with those, I think that would go a long, long way. Thank you.
Nicely done. Thank you. Forgive my throat. My name is Bart Harris. I'm an 18-year resident of Silver Lake, my wife, Jody, and I. I've been on the board for the association for the last 14 years. And each and every year what we do is we make sure that we get the goose roundup taken care of and we keep the lakes clean. You should come with us one time and take the spring cleanup and jump in the boat with us and take a look. This area where these boats are being launched, the amount of bottles, the amount of glass, the amount of damage that's done because of people that don't have a respect for the lake is really quite surprising. As I think about the idea of putting together a parking lot up on top of that, we've got a budgetary concern to think about. Who's going to patrol that parking lot? Who pays for the officers to patrol that lot? And how much more garbage is there going to be up there? A Sunday night, my son's grandparents' in-laws over here live in this, and they were telling me about the amount of bottles and debris that is left on a Sunday night now. Add 17 boats. And who? Now, I'm not looking at the lake, I'm looking at this responsibility of this township. Who's going to pay for all that? I'd like you to consider that. Pardon me?
It won't be the township, it'll be the owner of the property. If he has litter, it's got to be clean. But we do have people in this township that volunteer, especially Lake Panema on the launch site. And he goes to the different launch sites and cleans up every weekend. He does it on his own.
Isn't it a shame he has to do that?
And nobody knows his name, but he does it.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable.
Thank you for considering this.
Good evening. My name is Jack Townsend. I've lived on Silver Lake for 21 years. My concern is the ingress, egress to Silver Spray Marina. If you try to bring a boat and trailer heading east, you can't turn into the marina. The only way you can turn into the marina is coming west. And by doing so, you also have to navigate through traffic that's going 45 to 50 miles an hour. Some of those people fly through at 60 miles an hour. So now you're trying to drag a boat, a pontoon, or whatever you're trying to get down into the area. You also need radius to be able to get your boat and trailer maneuvered to get into the slip. Now, that's taking away parking spots, quite a few parking spots, by the way, especially when you have them staged. When you've got 3 or 4 boats and trailers trying to get in there and get onto the lake, it's a nightmare. So let's think about the 4th of July weekend, all right? You've got 50 boats out there. You've got partiers coming on. You've got probably 2 cars for every one of those boats. You have 100 cars that you need to park to go out and enjoy the fireworks or whatever, at least, okay? If you take that a little bit further, you've got children that are now going to be walking through those areas where people are trying to dock, trying to put their boats into the lake. It's just a nightmare. If you think that something should be done about it, I think that the Planning Commission, as the other gentleman said, should do a traffic study. Because right now, it's an untenable situation there. So that's my input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Nick Flynn, 72 Chateau de Lac. Been on the lake for over 24 years. Yeah, the lake is just unnavigable on the weekends. It's dangerous. But the bottom line is, I think we need to question the DEQ permit that they gave. Based on the Marine Code, there's supposed to be an environmental impact study done prior to granting additional slips. Has anyone seen a copy of that? I think we should probably ask for that. We should also ask if there was one done for an environmental impact study developed to assess further diminishing the attributes of Silver Lake as part of the 301 MDEQ Marine Division construction permit application process. And I'm sure the guy from the DEQ's never been on our lake on the weekends. Chris Clampett, you know, he's just filling out forms and approving things, rubber stamping things. And we should question, when was it ever expanded to 33 slips? Because I think these boat hoists and docks are fairly new, at least within the last 10, 15 years. So when were those approved originally? I know they don't have enough parking for 33 cars there. And the other thing is, we should consider no additional slips until we get a promise from the Sheriff Department to patrol. There hasn't been sheriff patrols on the lake for 2 years. And that's the biggest problem we have, because these boats are going all different directions, and they're violating all kinds of laws as far as too close to shore. So that's something we need to take a look at. And then the other thing is, I thought we had instituted not having keyhole accesses. I see this as the biggest keyhole access we've got, and maybe a marina, but he's got a storage building, 400 boats there, and they pull boats out of the storage building and put them in on the launch on the weekends. They've got so many boats that they pull on with trailers, and they've got 33 slips right now. So what's the limit? You know, we give them another 17 this year, and we get another 20 next year. And we need to take a look at White's Landing as well. He's got boats on every square foot of that property. He's got boat lifts in the middle of the lake, not even attached to docks, which I'm pretty sure it's illegal as well. So it's out of control. And I think it's just because no one's been watching it. And we'd love to give you a boat ride sometime in the summer, give you a first-hand look at it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in regards to speaking on this? If not, Mr. Reisig, do you want to finalize this and kind of, we'll see what you know we're going to do something, but we've got a lot of homework to go through.
I think it's incumbent upon, there's a meeting, I believe, this Thursday at the city. It's incumbent upon these residents to go to that meeting, and basically the question goes before the city first. And that is,
right.
City, will you require some sort of proof or certification of the number of parking spaces that'll be available? If you require 1 parking space for each slip, that means 50 parking spaces. So it's incumbent upon the city to determine whether or not there's sufficient parking to accommodate 50 spaces. And part of that requirement from the city, not the township, should be show us. Show us where the parking is going to be. Then that segues real nicely into what Mr. Mostola said, is that if they're going to have to show parking on spaces on places where there is no parking now, and it's easy when you look at the overhead, some of it's gravel and some of it's lawn, okay? I assume the gravel is where the parking takes place. I assume the gravel is where the parking for the apartments takes place. And so if they require some showing of where the parking spaces will be, and that parking is going to be on areas where parking is not now, then Mr. Mastola is 100% correct. It's going to trigger a site plan review because it's a change in the use. Even if you add one parking space, it's a change or expansion in the use. And if it's an expansion in the use, it requires full-blown site plan approval.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me preface by saying I can't speak for the city, but I had the luxury of sitting on the planning commission for several years and now sit on the ZBA. This is probably one of the largest crowds in 9 years that I can remember. I guess, first of all, I commend all of you, but I don't understand how it got this far, even how it got to the township. I spent an hour over there today. I walked every piece of the property. I can't even imagine adding 50. I would not add 15 spaces on this lake. So I don't understand how they could have postponed this unless it was a legal issue. You only brought up two. One was, do they have ownership to the property? The little space where they're going to add, what, like 10 of those 15 or 17, whatever it is.
I think
because there's some added to the end. So I guess what I would say is I would have this whole group go back. And everything I heard today, as a someone that has sat on the planning commission, the ZBA, I can't even imagine allowing Silver Spray to do that. And again, I'm not going to speak for the city, but I just, you have the best counsel in a big room. I can't even imagine.
Well, just one comment. This crowd is big, but it's not like the old ones we used to have, Bonnie, when we were starting development. Township wasn't. It was SRO in those days.
Yeah. George, we've been around a long time. We've seen a lot.
I haven't been around that long.
And I have too, yeah.
Mr. Isaac.
Yes, sir.
Do we know that, I know this is so so in its infancy here. Do we know that with this approval for the slips, would there have to be proof of parking available for that approval to go through?
Not for the MDEQ permit.
I understand that. I'm just talking for
this.
So theoretically, he could go to the city of Fenton and apply for this, and they could give him the slips without the parking?
No.
No?
But the question, and that's why I say it's incumbent upon us. Mr. Mastola hit the nail right on the head. It's incumbent upon these people, including me, to go to the city, meeting Thursday night,
correct,
and say, are you going to require them to prove sufficient parking for these slips? That is, you have a requirement of so many parking spaces per slip. They obviously are not going to put those on the city property. Where are they going to put them?
And for the public, we know George very well at the township, and judging by your drawing that you did with the 80-foot proper setbacks, which would be triggered if there was a
site plan.
Yeah. I see that potentially having less parking available, turning it into a conforming use than it is now. Is that kind of the vibe you got when you drew these lines for these 80-foot setbacks?
When I saw the 80 feet, I knew it was a duck that was dead in the water.
And I trust you. I believe it. Obviously, you know, our attorneys may have things to input, but I would just think that as the owner of the Silver Spray, if he would look at this, I see theoretically where he could end up with less spots than he has now. And we see that.
You have to understand that at the city meeting, not one person got up and said anything bad about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They said the Smiths are wonderful people. They're good people, and they begged them to withdraw their request. So I agree. You kind of let sleeping dogs lie sometimes.
Can you make one more
George, just so you mentioned, because everyone's kind of whispering, the meeting is not this Thursday, next Thursday, the 28th.
Thank you.
Also, with the spring break, so everyone there, the city.
The city of Fenton is on
Not this
the
Thursday, next Thursday.
Is that what he said?
Can I suggest one thing, though, for this city meeting? Bring some city residents on Silver Lake. Meeting, well, I'm just saying, because I don't know, I mean, I know how we do it here. I don't know if city's gonna honor non-city folk.
You're right.
So I would just say, I don't know. I mean, cities are different, they're a whole different animal. All right? So I would just say, have some city taxpayers show up there. So if they limit the speaking to taxpayers only, you at least have a voice there. Understood? Yeah. Okay.
Mike, would you like to say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think Mark had a good idea. I think it would be appropriate in this situation for me to write a letter to the city explaining that we have not approved any parking, we've not done any analysis on the parking, and that as part of their review that they should take into consideration the parking per their ordinance, and not just rely on, we have not approved any parking is what I'm trying to get at, and to write a letter to that state, stating that, so that they don't think that we've approved their parking for these additional slips. Because apparently it sounds like there's some misinformation between, the applicant and the city. And I think we can clarify that, without really weighing in on what our ordinance would say, just that we've not done an analysis on the amount of parking that they currently have. We do not make any determination if they comply with either zoning ordinance.
Mike, how could they even determine the property and how many, if there's no lines, there's, I mean, I can come in there and park a trailer sideways and pick up.
So the question, so they would have to provide some sort of plan to us to
As soon
show.
as they do that, doesn't it kick in
Well,
change?
Yes.
Then he goes to the planning commission.
I don't.
Mike, maybe I can weigh in on that.
Yep.
No, the answer to that is because they're going to get the marina's going to get some approval from the city based upon some false representation that the township's okay with whatever's going on, and they're never going to come to us. So that's why Mike's idea to send a letter saying, look, the township has not done anything. We don't know that they can park there or not park there. We don't know what use is allowed or not allowed. We've made no decisions. So at least the city knows when they have to ask them, where are you going to park the cars? If they say at the township, logic would say they're going to call the township and say, well, what are you doing with this? Which is nothing at this point. They have not come to us. So, no, the city could go ahead and approve this thing. And, maybe the guy says they want to have a helicopter haul cars away and park them at Genesee Valley Mall. Who knows?
So to get back to your question, once they put it on, if my hesitation is the goal would be for them to show us what they are currently doing, right? And then we'd be able to count the spaces that they are currently utilizing. And then if they need to go beyond that, that's when the trigger would kick in. Then they would have to upgrade everything. Yeah.
Just another question. So you had one communication from the city, that's it?
Correct.
So they picked up the phone and said, hey.
So the chain of events was we had Silver Spray Sports came in and asked for a zoning verification letter. And we get people ask that all the time, right? For insurance reasons, mortgage reasons, whatever. We need a letter stating what our zoning for our property is and what the use for the property is. And that's what we did in this case. Stated that these 3 properties are zone C2, that marina use is a permitted use in this district, and that these parcels have been traditionally used for parking. And that was the end of the letter. We made no determination on the number of spaces that they had, or when that was, if it was approved or not. Just that this is the zoning district, this is a use that's allowed in the zoning district, and that they have historically been used for parking. And that was given to Silver Spray Sports. And then they went to their meeting, and apparently they talked to the city and made it sound like to the city that we had approved the parking. Well, I got a call from the city after that meeting asking if we had, and I told them no. What we did was we created a zoning verification letter, just, again, stating the zoning, the use, and, you know, the historic use of those properties, we had, I could not tell you how many parking spaces are there. So I would not have any ability to say that they have enough parking and that it would be approved. And so that's the last communication I've had with the city. It was less than 5 minutes, and it was after their planning commission meeting.
So if Attorney Rising finds out a piece of property for the extra slips is not part of their property, or two, that the parking that's being used now doesn't proceed when the or the zoning was there, then it's null and void, right? I mean, it's over basically for them. Because then we can come in, correct? And say that it's not a use, that C2 is not a parking use?
So I think this is going to be more of a question for the attorney, because this comes to an enforcement issue,
So
right?
yes, we can. So if Attorney Rising finds out that, or we find out that the parking didn't precede the zoning preceded the parking, then, correct, we can do what we want to do.
Then I think the township can make a decision to enact that trigger.
Okay.
How in the world are you going to find that out?
Mr. Rising?
Mr. Rising.
Is Mr. Rising still here? I'm sorry. Can you find that out?
He's trying.
Which part?
The parking part. If it preceded the zone.
I'll have to look at historic aerial photographs from, the county has them every 5 years, back to 1961. So we can look and see what areas are disturbed.
51 or 61?
And you can make a guess. Okay?
Yeah, we didn't, and it was people who remember
It might help if,
different
that
trails.
solves one, and I think the easiest one for us would be to find out that they didn't own title to the property. If they don't own title, the city can't grant them the right to use
In
something.
between
that's outside the
campgrounds.
The real issue, I think, though, for parking is that like I said, it's our problem now to go back to the city and say, are you going to require, for example, one parking space per slip? And if so, are you going to require them to show you how they accomplish that? If they show how they accomplish that, and it goes under what are now undisturbed areas, then that triggers site plan, as Mr. Mistola said. I think that's the course of events.
No brainer, yeah.
Yeah, this is, I'm cool.
Any other
If they
discussion?
can do it, they can do it. They can accomplish it.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
If they,
Here.
say they have.
Come on up here and they can hear you.
My one question is, they say, yes, we have a room for 50 cars, for our 50 slips. My question is, then, do they close down their launch? And, you know, so they're making money off their launch. And so where's that car going to go with the trailer if there's only 50 parking spots over there?
That's right.
They're going to go out on the road, try to get in over there, and that's a hazard. And so my question is, if there is just 50 parking lots, are they going to close their launch? Because she kind of threatened us with saying, you know, if we're not getting this, we're going to start opening on Sunday and Monday. She didn't say it like that. She says, we're do you a favor by closing our launch on Sundays and Mondays. To me, this is me. I don't know how the other people felt. I thought it was a threat. You know, I heard everybody say good things about those people. To me, I'm not on the other side of the fence with them. But just where is that car and that trailer going to park if all they have is 50 spaces for the 50? And then the jet skis, where are those people parking that have the jet skis there? So like I said, are they going to close the launch down? That's another question that they should have to answer. Thank you.
Well, that's it. Is there, I'm going to be closing the meeting. Is there anybody else that wants to say something? If not, like Mr. Wright, oh, yes, sir. You want to come up here, please?
Sorry, are we in non-agenda public comments now?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What did you say?
We're not in non-agenda.
Oh, something else, okay. You don't want to talk about Silver Lake? About the boat? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
One last question. So is the township going to send this letter that's been recommended? And will it be before the next meeting that the city has planning commission.
I think the board's going to vote on that, but they have to finish this part.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we gotta do it. We don't need to get it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll vote on it. We'll vote it. All right, one other thing.
Just a quick question, Dave Cheesebro, but as far as the sheriff's patrol that we haven't seen for 2 or 3 years, do you know who funds that? I mean, does
All right, Mr. Gopal. Mr. Gopal was
I defer
Genesee
to-
County Sheriff, and he was the one that ran it for a long time.
I was, but I've been gone, I've been retired for 9 years, so I will defer to the gentleman in back giving me the cutoff sign. This is our detective for Fenton Township, Kirk Harrington. So he's, do we know anything about Marine Division? No idea. For this year?
We can get it for the next meeting. What we do, they do hit all the different lakes and that, but the township doesn't pay for the Marine Patrol.
Well, Commissioner Shoemaker's in the audience also.
Oh, Commissioner Shoemaker.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Where are you?
He's back over there.
Here he is.
Well, welcome back, Sean.
Mr. Gopal, your time's coming. As far as the funding of the patrol, there's a fixed expense to that, just like your regular patrol would be. Unfortunately, out of that expense, this year, there's had to be equipment purchased, such as boats, repairs, and that will actually be going down. So you're not going to see as many. You're paying, number one, young men and women to go out there minimum wage, so it's not a question of manpower, okay, because they're costing you very little, but in addition to all the other patrols they have, there's just not the dollars there. And everybody likes to see all these programs and all this other stuff, but unfortunately, like everything, a lot of people don't like to pay for them, especially when the rest of the county, okay, we're very blessed down here. We have tons of lakes. We have tons of activities, but the rest of the county does not have the amount of lakes we have. So when you've got 9 county commissioners, okay, our district that you live in is the 6th, which includes Argentine Township, which has some beautiful lakes, Fenton Township, which has some lovely lakes, City of Fenton, City of Linden, and part of Grand Blanc Township. It's very hard. You're gonna find it very hard to get the votes to allocate more funds for patrol for people that they view, I don't want to use the word, are entitled compared to what the rest of the county is going through. So as far as patrols, I wouldn't expect this year an increase because of the repairs to the equipment and an increase, another purchase of another boat. So
this additional traffic caused more hazardous conditions, we needed more patrol, we have to come up with our own funds to...
well, your Genesee County Sheriff's Department does a wonderful job if there is an issue on the lakes of coming out. Your township actually, Fenton Township actually provides those officers through your tax dollars then with that. Now, if there's additional officers needed, the county will send them out, just like at Lake Fenton Schools the other day. There was a safety issue, and the Sheriff's Department responded fabulously, and they would do that. But as far as actually watercraft to go out onto the lake to deal with an issue, they would, if something happened in the past, if I'm remembering it, Mark, from what you've told me before, they've actually borrowed civilian craft to get out to wherever they've needed to go to take care of that issue. You're still going to have to come up with the people. And I used to live on the lake. I used to live on Tupper Lake with Mr. Tucker, and I understand what you're saying as far as being out there with your children and your families on a weekend. Okay, it's just crazy everywhere. But even if you took, I believe, a lot of the boat launches away, when you have, like on your lake, I believe it's 300 and some residents on there, and they all want to use the lake on weekends because guess when we're off? We're all off on weekends. It's just really tough. And we get 3 months of nice weather in Michigan if we're lucky, right? And then we all want to use it on the same time. It's really a difficult issue. And with our family, we just told family and friends, guess what? If you want to come out, we'll drag you around the week all day. But weekends, it's just, I don't want to lose any kids the same way. So, but to answer your question, with my long-winded process, you're not going to see an increase. I'm sorry to tell you. So.
And thank you, Mr. Gopel. You
Yeah.
can stay longer for that.
Piggybacking on what Sean said, if there's an issue on the lake, please don't hesitate to call 911.
You're right, you're right.
Or call the township, because we do have ordinance enforcers that, follow the township ordinances. And I believe we had an issue on several, like a couple years ago, reference to some violations that was taken care of. The DNR also has boats. They're not going to be patrolling, but like Sean said, but if there is a police matter, if it's a criminal matter that needs to be addressed ASAP, you call 911. You can do that, and you'll either get a ground or a road patrol officer to come to your house. I mean, it's not a very wide lake. We can still usually identify the boat, or most of you can, at least, or an MC number. And we can, run the MC number, find out who that is, and an officer can investigate that situation. What Sean's saying is you're probably just not going to see the college kids in criminal justice program doing this for a summer internship actually out there patrolling as a PR measure. And I was in charge of the Marine Division in 2011 for a year. And that's what it is. I mean, very few tickets are issued. Obviously, criminal complaints are investigated, and if an arrest is necessary, that is, administered. But, they're not police officers. They have no more jurisdiction as far as citation writing as anybody. But that's what you're not going to see. You will still have police coverage there if an emergency or a situation arises. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rick Savansky, if you do send a letter and you get some kind of response from the city before the city meeting, is there some way you can communicate to us?
We could do it to Mr. Isaac. We'll do it to Mr. Isaac and then...
What approach to take at the city meeting? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me. I don't know if we solved any of your problems. I just want you to know, we did listen to you. Our concerns are there. There's no doubt about it. This one is a difficult one. Silver Lake, there wasn't a lot of things happening in Silver Lake except the cement factory and things like that in the back. And those lots, I don't know. But I believe Mr. Isaac and Mike and Mr. Belzer will find it. But you got to give us that time. Anything, gentlemen? Anything else? No. I hope we helped you. I feel bad that we didn't meet with you before, but honest to God, they never contacted us. If it wasn't for Mike Deem coming in my office and showing me the papers and then we sat down. By that afternoon, he was on the phone to Mr. Belzer, and we were working on it right then. We never knew anything from the city. So I don't care for that, but I will tell him that when I see him. So I will say good night. The meeting is adjourned. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I gotta. Yeah.
Well,
I'm just so excited.
Well, just direct our planning.
You want to make a motion, Bob?
Let's see if I can help it out. I will make a motion that directs our planning commission and/or our zoning administrator to prepare and issue a letter referenced by the township board and express all the concerns we've seen tonight.
I support. Let's roll call. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Tucker?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Gopel?
Yes.
Kessler?
Yes.
Mathis?
Yes.
Reed is absent, and I'll vote yes. So we can get that letter. It's now been reinforced as a motion on record. Don't know if it'll help. They might throw it away. But hopefully you understand, as Mrs. Mathis said, we understand what you're saying.
Okay, I have young man here that wants to
Oh, you
introduce
know what?
himself.
I didn't mean to forget you, but I did. All right, this is going on a public comment on agenda or non-agenda items.
Thank you, folks. My name is Leo Foley. While I live in Goodrich now, I grew up in Fenton. I know a half dozen or so of you folks from my days at St. John's. I'm here tonight basically to learn about the issues in Fenton Township because I'm running for Circuit Court Judge in 2020, and tonight was certainly an excellent night for me to come out and learn. So it's been a very long evening for everybody. So I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Is there anyone else on public comment? If not, good night. Meeting's adjourned. You're welcome.
No.